Sabon. Dumella. So yes, I was born in Pietermaritzburg. How do you say that? Unginglovu? Oh man, I've been away too long. Yeah, the place of the elephant. And went to Helderberg College. My parents worked at the Southern Publishing Association when that was still there. And grew up at Helderberg. The Hartleys were there. Their daughters were just a little bit ahead of me. And so it's lovely to see you guys here. And of course, I have to make a confession that that Dave, you have another title for him, but we call him Dave, and his lovely wife, Rochelle, are actually related to me. So I'm just honored that they're here. Thank you for coming today. And I have a confession to make, and that is that I'm not a preacher. I'm a teacher. Okay, so if you came to hear a sermon, then I think there's other churches in the area that are not too far, if you don't want to be disappointed. And I'm preaching now, and then, we're going to have a conversation now, and then we're going to have I guess there's a second service, and then there's 2 sessions in the afternoon. And I just want you to know that from my perspective, it's one continuous. So the conclusion is going to come at the end. So if you want the conclusion of the story, then it'll be in the afternoon. Are you following me? Okay. So hopefully each part will be somehow connected, so you can walk away with some sort of connection. But I really want to ask the question: why are we here? What is our purpose for being here? I worked at Pioneer Memorial Church for several years, and I know what it's like to belong to a big church. Right? When people ask me, what are you doing this weekend? It's been a busy trip. I'd had speaking appointments every weekend. They said, what are you doing this weekend? I said, I'm going to be speaking at Sandton. They said, oh, Sandton. Oh, you know about Sandton? I said, no, never been there actually. What is, do they worship in a tent? No. No. You know what? Let me ask you, what do you think people told me about Sandton? Huh? It's friendly. Okay, good. I'm glad you're telling me that. It wasn't what they were friendly. It wasn't the first thing they told me. And it has been friendly. Like when I got here, people just greeted me. And so I want you to know, I can testify that what you're saying is true. But that's not what people told me. Huh? It's big. Wow, there's a lot of people that go to Sandton. Yeah, so that's wonderful. That means a lot of people come here every week. And okay, and guess what else they told me? They said, you know what? They said, in South Africa, the who's who comes here. You just say who, and everyone knows that's who. They said, you'll be talking to people who are walking those halls, with the ivory. So if you want to get a message to the president, just say something here. I thought, who are these people? I'm looking for David and Joseph, and I'm looking for Daniel. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because you see, the question is why we're here. I've been a part of big churches, and there's two different things in tension in a big church. One is that often big churches are big because there's influential people that come, and you have lots of resources and you have lots of opportunity. And just I got a quick view of the church that you're going to be going into, and there's no doubt that this place has vision, that you want to do something grand, and that you have the resources to pull that off, and that's fantastic. It's fantastic. On the other side, I know what big churches are like, because often big churches struggle with isolation and loneliness. And there's a facade of spiritual excellence, but families are struggling. And there's sin because there's this dictum that power corrupts. Right? And somehow Adventists are not immune to that corruption. Right? As our elder prayed today, he said we can have big buildings and small hearts. Are you with me? So today we're not wanting to talk about Sandton, we want to talk about God. Because you see, really we have to understand Sandton's mission in the light of God's mission, right? What is God's heart for the world? What is His purpose? And then the question becomes, what is the opportunity that God has given you because of your access to whatever you have access to? What is the opportunity that God's giving you to live your life for Him in that place? Are you with me? Because you see, this is the mission of God. As a matter of fact, if you read the Bible, you can build the biggest church, and you can even have gilded chairs on the platform. You know what gilded chairs means? That means that you have real gold. Just a little bit of gold painted on those chairs, and people can say, you know, the Sandton Church has gilded chairs. Hey. But I want to tell you something. When we see a picture of the glory of God, all of our gold melts away into shadows. Are you with me? Because the glory of this earth is but shadows against the glory of our God. The majesty of the Creator. He's second to none, you know. There's no president, there's no king, there's no power that is greater than Him. As a matter of fact, if you want to understand the majesty of God, then what you need to do is look and see the fingerprint of the power of God in an atom. 3 atoms can destroy a whole city and all the surrounding areas. If you just open it up in the wrong way, all the power of God that's in those 3 atoms. Just think about it. So what are you? If God is the one who created all of that, sustains all of that, established the energy in all of that, you know, He has to be bigger than all of that. Do you understand? We have no idea how small we are in comparison to the greatness of God. So when we think of Sandton as big, yes, it may be big, but you know how big is? This little spot is just a tiny spot on a tiny planet in the middle of a tiny galaxy in the vast universe, all created and managed and ruled by the King who we've come to worship today. Don't forget who we are today. We are dust in comparison to God. We are lost in comparison to His glory. You understand? So when we come before God, yes, I'm not ashamed to tell you that there's probably wonderful things in this church. God is on the move in this church. You have a mission. He has chosen you out of His mercy and grace. For such a time as this. That's the reason that we're here, right? And so we have to reframe and rethink of our purposes in the light of the purposes of God. Because you see, unfortunately, it was one of the biggest churches with the most powerful people that brought about the demise of God rather than the glory of God. So just because you're powerful, just because you got a big church, doesn't mean to say you're on God's side. As a matter of fact, the bigger we are, the more vulnerable we are at playing church. Because this becomes a place for networking with other powerful people. You understand what I'm saying? And so we have to look at the glory of God. We have to look at the mission of God. We have to look at the heart of God in order for us to stand in our proper place. You understand what I'm saying? Because one day He's going to judge us. The secrets of our heart will be held open before the universe. And I don't care who's who. Because you know, there's only one who is who. You understand what I'm saying? He is the one who is full of love and mercy towards us. And the greatness of His mercy is equal to the depth of our sin. Let me ask you a question. I was going to use this illustration. We just kind of switched a little bit here. I was going to use this illustration with the children. We're going to do a youth festival, and we kind of changed gears. So I'll just throw this in here. I was going to do this illustration with the youth. I was going to divide the church into half. Say, close your eyes, please. Okay? Close your eyes. You don't have to close your eyes, but I'm just imagining. Imagine now we're going to close. Just imagine you're closing your eyes. Okay. So if you did close your eyes, then you wouldn't be aware of what I was doing. And then I would tell everyone, okay, for you closing your eyes, the rest of you watch, I'm going to make some we call it cookies. What do you guys call it? Biscuits, right? We call biscuits something you give dogs. And so I have to make that switch, biscuit, dog biscuit. Anyway, so I'm making some cookies. It's a quick ready mix. Just add water, okay? So it's easy to do here. So I'm making it. And I'm putting ingredients in, and I just want you to watch the ingredients. Those of you this side, just watch the ingredients. The rest of you got your eyes closed, okay? I'm busy making it. And one of the ingredients that you don't see, this is the question. How much sin is acceptable? How much sin is tolerable in the people of God? That's the question. So as I'm making these cookies, I want to put the different ingredients in. And for those of you with your eyes closed, you don't have a clue. For the rest of you, you're going to see, I'm going to get a tiny little vial out with a label on it that says dog poo. And I'm going to put that inside of the mix. Now, those of you who have your eyes closed, you just know that it's a biscuit mix, right? The rest of you know that's just listen, it's less than a gram. Less than a gram. And then while we're talking, I'm going to send that off to get cooked. And then I'm bring it out and put it here. Now, remember, it's just a tiny little bit amount of dog poop. All right? Now, let me ask you, for those of you who have seen, would you recommend, when I put this out and say, please, those of you who had your eyes closed, would you like to have these chocolate chips inside? How many of you would actually want to partake? How many? All of you, because you had your eyes closed, you were not aware of what was inside. You would see the outside. You may even see the melted chocolate, and they may even look delicious, right? I might have not bought them at what is a cheap store in South Africa? Like to show that when you're a struggling student, that's where you go buy your things. ShopRite. Okay, I might not have bought it at ShopRite. I'm going with ShopRite. So struggling student ShopRite. I might not have gone to ShopRite. Okay, give me the name of a store that's a store. Like if you want to go to this store, it's Woolies. Okay. I actually bought this box at Woolies, and I paid 500 Rand for the box because it had a name on it. We know that's only 20 Rand, but the other, we know we're paying for the name. So I brought the box. You see the name? That's how we are, right? There's a certain premium for names. So I actually but the cookies, even though they come from Woolies, and even though they have the premium name, what did I put inside? Dog poo. Are you understanding me? Now my question is, how much dog poo will you eat in your cookies? None? Uncompromising? Even if it was half of a gram? But listen, I put it through the oven, it was sanitized. At this point, it's just a concept is no longer potent. Okay, you understand my illustration, right? What's my illustration? How much sin is tolerable in the church of God? Are you with me? Like when it comes to representing the character of God, how much sin is tolerable? Now let me just tell you the secret. Here's the bottom line. I teach missionaries. Okay, I teach missionaries to be missionaries. And we teach missionaries to be missionaries in the places where it's hardest to be missionaries. So there's a term called the unreached. Why are the unreached unreached? I'll tell you, there's a group of people that are unreached. You have them in South Africa. They pray 5 times a day. They pray 5 times a day. They're very strict about their lifestyle. They don't eat pork. Are you following me? So do you know this group I'm talking about? They're hard to reach, right? In many countries in the world, the majority population is from that group. We have a group of several families working in a country. It's one of the largest countries in the world. There's 70 million population. Do you know how many Adventists from that country? Native Adventists. There's a little bit more if you take immigrants, but do you know how many native Adventists in that country? 18. And that's after the church has been working there for 100 years. So that's a hard to reach place, right? Okay, so here's what I want to tell you. The more poop in the people of God, and I'm using that as a metaphor for sin, the less effective we are at reaching hard to reach people. Because there's nothing so compelling that your religion is right to see other people living their religion half-heartedly. Following me? I have a relative who's left Adventism, very disgusted with Adventism. And he told me this. He said, he's as disgusted with Christianity at large. He says, there was a famous South African cricket player. He's a Christian guy. I don't remember his name, but this guy was famous. Everyone's like this, poster boy Christian, etc. And then it turns out that this guy was sleeping around and partying, and after he left cricket. And he said, now there's one of these people that pray 5 times a day. He's a famous cricket player. But he will not even drink water during Ramadan, even though he's playing cricket. So the question is, what's the level of integrity we have with the message we have? Because you see, the level of integrity we have is actually determining the effectiveness that we have to reach unreached people groups. You see, being righteous is not about saving ourselves. It's about bringing salvation to others. God saves us with His grace. That's why. And then He says, you can be clean. I'm going to somehow take that batch of cookies and get the poop out of it. Are you with me? That's the miracle of the gospel. But the question is, now here's the question, why didn't you want to eat those cookies? Because you knew there was something inside that is not good, right? So when we're doing evangelism and we're not allowing God to cleanse us from the inside, guess what? When people come close to us, you know what? They don't want to partake. Why? Not because of our theology, but because of the poop. Are you following me? And I don't care what title you have. As a matter of fact, often the more titles and more power we have, the more vulnerable we are to make compromise. Because where you've got lots of power, you're in a position where people are bending the rules all the time to their advantage. So why not you? Are you with me? Now, you didn't come here to be smacked around, and I'm not here to smack you around. I'm here to talk to us as a people. Okay, what is the purpose of the church? What is the opportunity that God presents to us in this community? What is the invitation that He has? What is His heart for us? What is His mission? Are you with me? Okay. So, I'm known for long introductions. That was the introduction to the sermon today. And I want us to be thinking about that because hopefully those of you who stay by until the end of the day today, you'll have some very practical tools that you can go with from this place and serve with from this place. Fair enough? That's my hope. All right, so I just want to give you an introduction. This is my family. I have 2 children, and my wife is a pediatrician. She was born in South Africa. She was actually born in Butterworth. Her parents graduated from Heidelberg College and then went to Butterworth, and I think there was something in the water there that they had, and my wife was born there. And then my father-in-law, I don't know if you know the Lellos. Does anyone recognize the name Lello? Okay, so Mari and Beresford are my wife's uncle and aunt, and Graham and Judy Lello, my wife's parents, went to Andrews. And she graduated from Loma Linda, serves as a pediatrician. And I like to tell people about my wife. I like to say that, some men come home and wives have moved the furniture around. My wife, I come home and she's changed the house. Literally, she's been remodeling our house for as long as we've been living in it. It went from a ranch house to a cottage, and we've got multiple stories. And I tell people that she's a pediatrician to serve her construction habit. So I'm very proud of my wife. There's nothing that she can't imagine that she can't make. Very, very bright woman. And then there's my daughter. She's 20 years old, and she's studying at Andrews University, doing religion and English. And her dream is to write a book on the life of Moses. She wants to tell the story of Moses in a compelling way for young adults. And she's studying Egyptology and archaeology and anthropology and sociology and histology. No, that's, if you know what histology is. The medical people are like, what is he talking about? He's talking nonsense now. But she's studying all kinds of things so that she can understand what was going on last December. Not this one, last December. She actually went on the Exodus tour and followed the Exodus of the Israelites. And she sits me down and she says, Dad, have you heard about this? This is a phenomenal thing that somehow Jethro could have been related to Job, that somehow there may be this genealogical connection. She's in that realm where she's wrestling with big thoughts. I'm proud of her. She wants to become an Old Testament professor, Old Testament history professor, and write books. And my son, you can see he's wearing a shirt. Does anyone recognize? MIT. So we took him there just on a whim this last summer. It's a Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and he's an engineer. We bought him a 3D printer, and he's been printing 3D printing and making things. Rubik's Cubes? He's been designing his own Rubik's Cubes and selling them. His own complicated puzzles. So we took him to MIT, and I've never seen my son fall in love. He was walking around like, how girls look when they get a little bit cuckoo, when they get the love drug in their brain? He's just walking around like that. So he's 17 years old, and I'm 6'4", he's 6'5.5". And so look up to my son. Very, very bright guy. And I have the privilege of living and learning in that place. You know what I've learned? the hardest place to be a Christian is in your own family. You can preach anywhere and stand up and say things, and then you leave. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine from the General Conference said, an expert in any subject is someone who's more than 250 kilometers from home. Yeah? You just leave home for a while, but the people at home, they know who you are, right? Like my wife, she's like, yeah, I know how you put your underwear on. Left foot, then right foot. That's the way you do it. Like everyone else. Like, you're nobody. You think you're somebody. So we need families to remind us that, we're just nobody. Right? We struggle with stuff. And I'm going to come to this point where this morning I want us to think about that family is the place where we practice Christianity. Okay, that's the thing. So that if you look at the quality of your family, you can see there either the grace of God working out or an opportunity for the grace of God to work out. Are you hearing me? So you can either see the grace of God working out in your family or an opportunity for the grace of God to be working out in your family. Do you hear the subtle suggestion? Okay, good. So the family is the place where God is at work. And I want to talk about what that means. Before we do, my wife always complains that I come to South Africa, which is in the southern hemisphere. You guys are having summer here. It's been wonderfully cool. But I come just at the right time to miss this. So I just want to show you this very briefly. This is a little drone video that my daughter put together. And you cannot guess, see if you can guess where this is taken. Does anyone want to guess where that is? That's Lake Michigan. So it's about half a kilometer into Lake Michigan. The Lake Michigan is frozen because it's so cold. I checked the temperatures in Celsius. The temperatures were in Berrien Springs, which is unusual, were minus 23. So yeah, it was cold, and my wife said you can't be out for more than 10 minutes without your skin freezing. So you got to be very careful. And I'm just so grateful that she has to shovel the driveway, not me. No, I'm just kidding. So it just happens that I always leave, and she has to shovel the driveway. So she's grateful when I get back. Okay, here's the question. Here's the question that I want to wrestle with today. Why do we exist? What is our purpose? As a matter of fact, this question is another way of asking the question, what is our mission? Okay, so we spend lots of time debating, what is our mission, right? What is our mission? What is the mission of this church? And so I want to ask you to think about, tell me, what do you see as the mission of this church? Talk to me. This is the moment I'm switching into teacher mode. What is the mission of this church? The Sandton Church. Okay, to take the three angels' messages to the world. Okay, good. What is the mission of this church? Pardon? Okay, you're actually located in a specific area, and so we could connect this three angels' messages idea with the message of with the responsibility that there's somehow, because we're here, we have access to people around here that others don't have. We have a responsibility to the people that are around. Okay, good. What else? To actually reveal the love and goodness of God. That the mission of this church is to reveal the love and goodness of God. Good. What else? Okay, to love our neighbors as ourselves. Okay, good. Good. And I want to suggest that these are all high-level biblical answers that we're giving. The question is, as a church, what do you see as the reason for your existence? And here's what I want to postulate to you, and that is our reason for existence is to fulfill God's purposes for us here in this time. Right? That's our mission. Because you see, here's the principle. We don't come up with our mission. This is God's mission. As a matter of fact, God was here before we came along, and He will be here after we have bent over, like they say in Zimbabwe. Right? You don't die, you bend over. After we have died, God will still be here. So the question, whose mission is this? It's not ours, it's God's mission. I want us to think about that. I want to think about what that means today. Okay. So here's the Seventh-day Adventist Church, 2015. They came up with a revised mission statement. I did a little research. I'm in a doctoral program, and when you're in a doctoral program, you have to come up with stuff. You have to research stuff. And I was actually fascinated because I asked the question, people are complaining about the structures of the church, and we need to be aligned with the mission of the church. And so I was like, what is the mission of the church? How do we define it? So I went through, if you want to do this, you can do it. I went through and did a survey of all the yearbooks since the first yearbook that the church put out, where we actually say officially the Seventh-day Adventist Church exists for this purpose, okay? And it's fascinating to me that it's only in the last 15 years, 2000 was the first time the church came out with a mission statement for the whole church. That was fascinating, interesting. One thing, number one, it's changed several times since then. I think they've just updated the wording again, which shows that we're struggling to articulate as a world church what we really belong to. And then the other thing I found was fascinating is that this is the Seventh-day Adventist Church General Conference mission statement, and the divisions of the General Conference have their own mission statements, which are different from this. So we don't have necessary alignment in the church. So those were some fascinating things. But let's just look at this. The mission of the Seventh-day Adventist Church is to call all people to become disciples of Jesus Christ, to proclaim the everlasting gospel embraced by the three angels' messages, and that's fundamental. We're going to look at that later today. And to prepare the world for Christ's soon return. So do you see these three things? If we think about this, as this group has articulated this season, it says the Seventh-day Adventist Church exists to do three things. What are they? Call people to become disciples, right? Number two is to proclaim the three angels' messages. That's what we're saying is the everlasting gospel. We want to get the message out. And three is actually a work of preparation, okay, for the second coming of Christ. So that's call, proclaim, and prepare would be the three things that this is talking about. Now, what I've been talking about here, if you look at this, this is the leadership of the church, this is the institutions of the church, this is the membership of the church, and you understand that there's going to be fewer leaders and fewer institutions than actual members, right? We understand that. And I'm drawing this picture here to try and illustrate the fact that the Seventh-day Adventist Church as an institution is actually a very small part of the larger work of God. Are you with me on that? That God's mission in this world is not limited to us and our people. He's working amongst all people. Why? Because we know that God doesn't see color. He doesn't see geographical national boundaries. He doesn't see religious boundaries. He sees my kids. Everybody on this planet is God's children, and we know that the Spirit of God is wooing, drawing with a sense of urgency that we don't feel all people from all nations to come sit at the table. Are you with me? Okay, so I want you to show you this picture. I did this, this was a fascinating thing for me the other day. So when I did this with the church membership, it actually grows about 3,000 a day. The numbers are going up, so we're kind of pushing up towards 20 million Seventh-day Adventists in the world. There's about 250,000 employees. Did you know that the church has about 250,000 employees around the world? Okay, and then top leadership. This would be people, total top leadership. This would be people in division, union, conference positions. And then the general conference is about 22 people. Okay, so I drew these different lines, and I wanted to I asked myself, what's the ratio of members to all of these circles? Okay, if you think about the ratio of members to all these circles, this is what it looks like. And I'll tell you why I'm going to show you this picture. Look, this is what it looks like. So what does it tell you? What does it tell you about, if you're just an ordinary member like me, I'm just an ordinary member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, where's the greatest opportunity for the mission of God to be fulfilled? It's not the leadership that can do this, it's us. Okay? So, and I want to just heighten this. How many hours a day do we spend at this church? Let's just say that you guys are crazy and you spend the whole Sabbath here. You're that kind of crazy. Okay, so that's wonderful. You come here, come early, you spend the whole Sabbath, you enjoy being together. Even if you did that means that there's 6 days that you're not here. Okay? And by the way, I just want to tell you something, you're not going to like this. But I just question the stewardship of spending millions of dollars on a building you only use for a few hours. So I'm not saying that you're doing the wrong thing. I'm asking, look at the opportunity that building presents, and how is that building going to be used so that it's all the time being used, so that investment can actually be used for the glory of God. So that's not saying you shouldn't do it. You got to finish this up. But the question of where the church is not here. The church is out there. Do you understand what I'm saying? And the reason that that's important is because we often see this church as a place we come to. No, the church is a place we go from. The church is a thing that we are under the head of Christ. And if you were an AFM missionary, you know what I'd be saying? Where you spend most of your time is where you're a representative of the church. as a missionary? How are you and I living out the opportunity that God gives us where we spend most of our time? Are you following me? So the family and the places where we're interacting with people are the two places where we're spending most of our stewardship time. Let me ask you another question. Pastor made a beautiful appeal, offering appeal. Love the offering appeal. Spiritual, very deeply spiritual. Let me ask you a question. How much does the average person give to church? About 2% of your total income. That's generous. Like people are generous, giving generously offerings. An average is 2%. Do you know what that means? After you've given 10%, how much is left? Like we're not talking about taxes and other expenses. How much is left? 88%. Let me ask you a question. Who does that 88% belong to? Do you understand what I'm saying? So if we're thinking missionally, we think in terms of what's the purpose of the mission of God. I don't care whether you're driving a bicycle or you're driving a Land Rover. Those are God's mission vehicles. And you might need to drive a Land Rover in order to have access to people that the person on the bicycle couldn't have access to. Because you see, in heaven, it's not about bicycles and Land Rovers. It's about the Spirit of God working through the people of God to reach the children of God. And sometimes the children of God are actually locked up in first class. And it's going to take another child of God who just happens to be in a place where they can sit in first class so that they can talk to that person in first class. Does that make sense? So your Land Rover is not a status symbol, it's an opportunity for missions. Are you understanding what I'm saying? Okay, so if you switch this around and say, look, this is not the center of church. You're not coming to church to be church. You're going from church to be the church. Now we're thinking as missionaries, not members. You see, members come to sit and listen and be entertained and be challenged and be inspired and pay and then go. And then you just do life and you do take care of business. You come back and like, oh yes, I need to be remembered that I am a sinner. Right? I need to be reminded of that. But my friends, that's not God's purpose for us. God's purpose is for us to live powerfully amongst the Gentiles as a witness, a compelling witness that God's kingdom is great, that His purposes are true, that His love is pure, and that He's willing to give us life in Jesus Christ. Here's a challenge. Talk about cookies. How many of us know that the Seventh-day Adventist Church has the health message? We have a health message, right? Isn't that a wonderful message? Okay, let me ask you a question. This is the tougher question. How many of you would consider yourselves to be healthy? Are you following me? Because you see, there's a difference between having a health message and actually having the life that message talks about. And I want to tell you a little secret. You can have a health message all you want, but the people out there want to look at your life. Does the message does it convert into a life that's compelling? And listen, good health is not just about being a vegan. Good health has been about being strong and fit and having lots of energy and actually being vitalized and alive. Okay? I was totally vegan and very sickly. Did you know that you can drink beer and eat chips and be vegan? Totally true. So I tell people I'm not vegan, I want to be healthy. I want to be healthy. So we work out, my family and I work out. We try to eat very, very, very. But the point is that God has given us a wonderful message that we need to take into the world. And so we have an opportunity as a people of God to live out and share that message. Okay, I'm going to skip over these two slides here because I want to share with you Adventist Frontier Missions mission statement and introduce a concept to you. I joined Adventist Frontier Missions 2005, and there's something about this mission statement that was really compelling to me. Do you see what it says? AFM exists. It's a member organization of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It's a supporting ministry of the church. And it says exists to establish what? Indigenous. Why would indigenous be a question? Or why would it be important if you're going to work in unreached people? What does indigenous mean? What's that? Is something local? Yes. What does it mean to be indigenous? It's from that place, okay? So it's actually something that the local people would feel comfortable with. So I just read a story. One of our missionary kids told a story of how his dad and the church members in a tribe in the Philippines were talking about what dress should be worn in church. And they decided that the best dress for them to wear, now they're thinking as missionaries now, the best dress for them to wear would be a t-shirt and a G-string. Do you know what a G-string is? You don't even want me to describe it, but it's let me just say that it makes a Speedo look modest. Okay, why did they want to wear G-strings in church? Here's why. Because all their family that lived up in the mountains, they just wore G-string. They didn't even wear a t-shirt. And so if they came from the mountains and they wanted to come into church and everyone was dressed like us, do you know what would happen? They would say, we don't feel comfortable there, we don't belong there. Does that make sense? So the question is, are we dressing in a way without compromising principle to make it easy for people out there to find Jesus? Or are they going to stumble over our clothing on the way to finding Jesus? Because you see, Jesus didn't wear a suit. Like he didn't have a tie. Do you understand? Those are cultural conditioned manifestations of what it looks like to be formally dressed. Okay, so the question is, if we're going to do indigenous work, what kinds of things would we need to adapt without compromising? That's a difficult missiological challenge. Okay, so the second thing is we want to plant Seventh Adventist churches, but we don't just want to do that. We want to plant what? We want to plant church planting movements amongst unreached people groups. And as I've worked in this organization over the years, I've come to realize over and over again that this mission statement is a factor of 3 or 4 times impossible. To actually do that amongst unreached people groups, to do something that's truly indigenous and something that's not just a church but a multiplying church. That's a massive thing. Okay, so if you look at this just grammar, it exists to establish movements. Why would we exist to establish movements? I hope we can answer that question next service. Okay, I want to do a Bible study with you that's convicted me that this is not just a missiological fad or something that's kind of cool. It's actually part of God's plan. That every single one of us would be contagious. You see, here's the principle. If you want to have a movement, you've got to have multipliers. Is that right? The members have to go from members to multipliers. That's what movements are made of. And it's my conviction, I'm going to show you from Scripture, but it's my conviction that God's heart is that we be multipliers, and that's been His dream from the very beginning. That's His heart. That every single one of us be contagious as a multiplier in the kingdom of God. Now, that's another way. Your pastor, Pastor Justin, we've talked a lot, he's really passionate about disciple making. I just want to suggest that disciple making is just another word for being a multiplier in the kingdom of God. Are you with me? Okay, so I just wanted to give you an idea of what that vision looks like, okay? So here's a picture of the globe, just in case you didn't recognize it. And this is what the globe looks like if you're trying to get a picture of what it looks where the unreached live. So you see, it's maybe some difficult for some of you, but you see the green dots? This would be predominantly reached areas. What do we mean by reach? These are people who live within the reach of the gospel. So the Sandton area is a reached area. Why? There's a church here, and there's members that are living here. Unreached, and a technical definition of unreached is that it will require someone leaving home and living amongst those people as an emissary of or ambassador of Christ in order for those people to have the opportunity to be reached. That's what an unreached people group is. Are you with me? Okay. So, what does it look like? Well, if you look at this map, this is our dream. These little dots on here represent some, from the back there, you probably can't see them, but they represent where our projects have been, are currently, or we're planning projects. And our dream, just to give it a visual, is that you'd have multiplication taking place at every one of those places. So you're seeing this kind of multiplication of the kingdom of God. Are you following? That's what we're looking for. Okay, so in that context of what does it take to be a movement, I want to come all the way back now and end our time together with a simple question. What does it look like when the gospel takes a hold in a community? All right? What does it look like when the gospel takes a hold in a community? So here's a little premise I would like to challenge with you, throw out there to challenge you with. I have 4 hypotheses I would like to present to you. The first hypothesis is that salvation looks like relational healing. Are you with me? What do I mean by salvation looks like relational healing? That would mean that if God's saving work is actually taking root in my life, I should expect the relationships around me to improve. Fair enough? So an evidence of the activity, the divine activity of God, would be relational healing. Now, why would I come to that conclusion? Well, the gospel tells a story of broken relationships, right? That something happened that severed our relationship with God and then complicated and corrupted our relationship with each other. And the result of that is something we call sin. And that sin is a principle that works itself out in painful relationships, dysfunctional relationships. Are you with me? So to the degree that there's God in our lives, to that degree, we experience brokenness in our most intimate relationships. That's the premise that we hear. Salvation looks like relational healing. So here's the second premise, and that is that community reveals relational brokenness. What does that mean? That means that when we get to church and we start having political issues and we start having interpersonal issues and we start seeing marriages struggling, we shouldn't be surprised, because when we live together, we experience the brokenness inside of us. The only problem is that when we experience that brokenness, all we can see is the brokenness of everyone else. And so we go around telling everyone how corrupt and broken and dysfunctional everyone else is without following the principle that Jesus said, and that is looking at the beam in our own eye. Are you following me? Okay, so here's an illustration. I grew up in a fairly chaotic family. There was fire and ice. Was the two ways that conflict was managed. My mom was on the fire side and my dad was on the ice side. Okay? So when things were pretty rough, I remember, things getting thrown around, and I remember my dad isolating himself. Okay, so now, but by God's grace, my parents have seen God's Spirit moving and working through them, and they're still married. And but I'm just telling you, that's the environment I grew up in. So I was like very, very vigilant about making sure that I figured out how relationships worked. So I read books on relationships because I was kind of terrified. When I started liking a girl, I'd get this love phobia. I was like, I have no idea if this is going to go crazy. Okay? So I had to work through this. And so I read and watched videos on how relationships work, and read books and thought about it. And I actually helped mediate people, crisis and conflict. And when I was a youth pastor serving in a large church, 600 members, people who were married came to me and they asked me for marriage counseling. And when I was done, they told me it actually helped. The single person marriage counseling, it actually helped, okay? And so I was pretty confident that I had something going on. And then I met a girl, and she was South African, and I realized the problem of dating in America for a South African was I just couldn't find someone who knew what a bath was, or an aunt. And because they call them baths and aunts. And I know I don't want to have aunts in the family, I just want aunts in the family. Anyway. So long story short, we fell in love, and we dated for a while, and just craziness. I saw God's hand leading us together. Really, because I needed God to be clear, this is the one for you, and He really did. I could bore you with the details. And all the ladies, you can come to me during the next break, and I'll tell you what happened, how that happened. But here's the point. The point is, 6 months in, I started feeling feelings of resentment and anger and bitterness that I'd never felt before. Like, I have been at peace with everyone, and now she's in my life. Let me just ask you men, logically, okay? I live at peace with everyone. I have no feelings of anger or resentment or bitterness towards anyone. All right? I get married. She enters my life. What's the only thing that changed in the equation? Guys are all with me, right? So based on physics and pure philosophical sound logic, I came to the conclusion that there's something defective about my wife. Really, like it was just clear that she had issues, like childhood stuff. She needed to go see a psychologist or something. so that we could have peace in the family. Okay, now all of that tongue-in-cheek to say that I had to come to the painful realization that being close to someone is different from being in relationships at a distance. And the closer we get to people, the more vulnerable we are to realize the dysfunction and brokenness in our own heart. We find sin by getting close to people. Are you with me? So I had to come to the realization that this sense of conflict between my wife and I was not a surprise, it was an invitation for me to come to terms with a problem that I have inside of me. Now, those of you who married and have kids know that kids complicate it multiple times more. Like kids are just, I like to say children are a wonderful problem. Like they just mess up your life. They're just so disrespectful and self-centered and rebellious, and I tell you, we could just do without them. Are you with me? Okay. No, I want to say let's turn it around. Let's turn it around and realize I believe that God gives us children for our own salvation. Because children teach us to pray. Children, and here's the frightening moment. You look at your kids and you realize you're just about to shout at them and they're mimicking you. How dare you do that? You understand what I'm saying? So the point I'm trying to make in the family environment is that when we get close to people, we experience a nastiness inside of ourselves that we might be surprised and be like, it's got to be my spouse. It's got to be my kids that have got issues. And what God is inviting us to do is to realize that that's His knocking at the door saying, you need help. You need help. Take the beam out of your eye. You'll see clearly. You got issues, sister. You got issues, brother. You may have a tradition of what's right, but I want to tell you, if you come to me and find out what's right, you'll be a different man. You'll be a different woman. You'll be a different son or daughter. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because you see, the characteristics of relationships in the world is chaotic. It's the principle of the survival of the fittest. It's manipulation and power. It's who gets money and who doesn't. It's favor versus non-favor, right? But in the kingdom of God, it's based on the principle of love and of peace and of purity. Okay, so community reveals relational brokenness. That's also true in the church. It's also true in missionaries. I'm going to tell you something. One of the weirdest things, working for a mission-sending agency, let me ask you a question. When missionaries get sent to these far countries and they've got this wonderful, what's the work that they got to do? They got to preach the gospel, right? All right. So missionaries are going to go preach the gospel. Wonderful. We're going to have them go preach to those natives there. So exciting. These are real, like you guys are the kind of like the comfortable missionaries, but we're going to send real missionaries to go amongst the dangerous place where you could get killed if you became a Christian. Are you following me? Okay, so they're going there. They're going to do this hard work of preaching the gospel. And then we get a message from 2 missionary families, and they're saying, I don't want to see the other missionary family. Like, we could just preach the gospel if they weren't here. And I'm not joking. I just came from a mediation where I did that. Just, like, this is hours, 2-3 weeks ago. I was talking with one missionary individual, and this was the message. I don't want to see those folks anymore. Do you sense the irony in that? Okay, here's the irony. The irony is, when missionaries go to preach the gospel, they often feel that it'd be so much easier to preach the gospel if they didn't have to deal with all this relational junk. Here's the irony. Do you know why we have a gospel? Because of the relational junk. Do you realize that the relational junk is really a test of your gospel? So if you're experiencing dysfunction in your church, hallelujah. That's the best place for you to practice evangelism. Are you with me? The best place for you to practice evangelism is in the church. When you're not getting along with somebody, I want the bell to ring. That bell should be ringing loud and clear. It should be saying to you, you know what? You're hating that person. You feel like you never want to see them again. Ring, ring, ring. Opportunity for gospel to be practiced. Here's the thing. You never want to need a gospel because the gospel means something horrible has happened. People have died when the gospel is needed. People have been deceived when the gospel is needed. People have been betrayed when the gospel is needed. Do you understand what I'm saying? A gospel is needed when something horrible has happened. Because sin, my friends, is despicable. It's corrupting. In its very nature, it's corrupting. And here we are sitting next to each other, so close. And our wickedness and their wickedness is just colluding. Okay? And we often look at those people who develop churches that divide, churches that are fractious about issues. Okay? I want to tell you, they're missing an opportunity to practice the gospel. So here's the thing. Relational brokenness provides an opportunity for us to experience salvation. That's what it provides. That's the opportunity in the brokenness. So don't be surprised when it happens. Lean into it. Because the power of God, Paul says, I'm not ashamed of the power of God because it is I'm not ashamed of the gospel because it is the power of God for what? Salvation. You know what salvation looks like? Relational healing. It looks like relational healing. And by the way, I grew up in South Africa in the 90s. I grew up in South Africa in the 80s, goodness. I left in 89. Something happened in our country that looked like relational brokenness. Wouldn't you agree with me? Oh, do we have a legacy of relational brokenness in this country? Is that legacy are we still working it out? Okay, are we upset about it? Yes, we should be. But the question about what is God's mission? Think about it. We have a profound opportunity as a church to live out what? A gospel. To bring about what? Relational healing. That's what it looks like when God fixes things. Are you with me? Okay. So, my final point is that the way we live together is our gospel. I couldn't care less. You have the best preacher, best evangelist in the world come. You could have James White himself come resurrected from the dead and preach a series. Or Ellen White could come and preach herself here and do an evangelist and do an effort in your church. Okay? So the message would be just like almost directly from God. I'm trying to paint a picture from the front. Let me just tell you something. When people come in from the outside, they're going to trip over you. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because they're not looking at what the message is. Remember, evangelism is just advertising. When you stand up and evangelize, it's like, dear friends, I want to tell you there's a gospel and the gospel makes your life better. Let me just tell you all the ways that it's a beautiful system of truth. Look at this beautiful system. Okay, and the people are like, wow, that advertising is surely compelling. Let me just take a look and see what the product looks like. Oh, there's a gap. To the degree there's a gap, they're going to be like, sounds like false advertising to me. Are you with me? The world church, horrendous statistics. I'm just doing research right now. The world church average of keeping people that come into the church, 2 come in, 1 goes out. Now I want to ask you, 50%? Can't we do better than that? Some places it's, in this division, it's 10 come in, 6 go out. We're retaining 40% in this division. Why? Because we got a great message. But people stumble over us when they actually come and live amongst us. They fall over us. Why? Because the way we live together is our real gospel. That's the best we can do. So I'm going to end with a story. I got 3 minutes to tell the story. You said 25, right? I'll tell you what. Come back next service for the story. That's a good place to stop, I think. It's a good place to stop. So let me tell you, folks, I'm honored to be here with you. I'm not here to condemn you. I'm here to show you something really exciting. That God is much more for you than a beautiful building. Praise God for your building. I don't want to put your building down at all. But may God's mission be so heavily present here that the building is second to what people know you for. And I want to tell you something. That's God's heart for you. And when you're known for God's children, I want to tell you something. Watch out. Watch out. Because there's nothing, it's second to none. Like what God wants for us is second to none. I'm going to show you as best I can on these 4 whiteboards here during church. We'll end with a story, and then I'm going to show you over the church a picture that I discovered recently that has just blown my mind, really. So those of you who have to leave, I'm sorry. You'll just miss out. But you can get the DVD. But those of you going to come, I invite you to come ready to explore what is God's heart for this church. Thank you. Oh, we need to. Okay, I have one more thing. I got 1 minute. You came and please come to the front. You sat down and on your chair was a little form. Okay, so we have a young man. I work for Adventist Frontier Missions, and we're in partnership with Abundant Life. And we have a young man here, and he told me that God has opened up the way miraculously for him to be at Abundant Life this year. Praise the Lord for that. And I have spent some time with him. This guy, he's nuts. He's Sesotho. And I said, how many languages do you speak? He said, I'm trying to learn 11 languages. So he's like a Swiss Army knife when it comes to languages. And when I was a young boy, I fell in love with missions by going to Lesotho. There was a mission hospital. Do you remember the Masons? The Masons, just dear to my heart. And I kind of cut my teeth going to Lesotho and Maluti Hospital. So when I met him, I had a soft spot for him. So this is what he said to me. He said, Laurence, you can just hold that, and you can give it to me. He said to me, Laurence, God has miraculously been providing for me one step at a time. He says, my family, he says, when it comes to helping me, he says, we're in first gear when it comes to finances. So we wanted to give you an opportunity. If you would be interested, I'm not going to ask for a financial commitment, but if you say, I would love to support this young man this year. He still needs some sponsors to prepare. He wants to be a pastor, and this is a step in that. He needs some sponsors. There's a form. I'd like to ask that you just put your name and your phone number on the form. Okay? If you want to check anything else on there, you can. But if you're willing to help him out, I'm sure that this congregation could help him if that God laid you on your hand. But I'm not going to ask you to make a commitment financially, but here's what we do, and this is part of AFM's philosophy. We don't ask for money, we ask for partners, for teammates. And what that's going to mean is that if you put your money, if you put your name and your contact information, then what he's going to do, and his name is Jafta, he's going to contact you, and he's going to say to you, this is my story. Would you like to be part of my team? Okay, so I'm going to give him an opportunity to touch base with you. So if you would be so kind as to, if God lays that on your heart, would you be so kind to fill that out, and then he's going to be at a door, and we just want to ask that you bring all of them, all of these forms, whether they're empty or not, just give them back to him, because we'll reuse them. And this is an opportunity for us to train a missionary and send a missionary. Is there anything else you wanted to say in 30 seconds?
In Afrikaans, they say, dankie.